Pharmacy is a recognized medical practice that dates back to the Sumerian times in 1700 BC, when papyrus scrolls and cuneiform tablets were used to record prescribed medications and early theories of the discipline. As time went on and as technology advanced, the profession of pharmacy has transformed into an amazing field with great patient outcomes. The past 30 to 40 years, however, have drastically changed the way pharmacy is practiced, and although most of us have not lived to see this change, some pharmacists have. Today you'll hear from 3 of these pharmacists who are all from different specialties in the pharmacy practice and have had different experiences with this change. First, let's listen to how Dr. Drew Silverman got interested in pharmacy. Dr. Silverman is a transplant specialist pharmacist at Tampa General Hospital who specializes in liver transplant. Dr. Silverman has been in practice for 35 years.
So, my stepfather owned a pharmacy, and in high school I started to work there. And when I did my aptitude and I met with my guidance counselor, she thought because I was good in math, I should be an accountant. So, back then that meant 4 walls, an adding machine, and a ledger. And I was like, that doesn't sound like me. I kind of like people. So as I was working for him, I was like, math, science, people. I saw the interactions he had as an independent pharmacist with his patients. They would ask him questions. I was like, this actually looks something that I could do. So I applied to pharmacy school.
Next, I want to introduce Tom Cuomo and how he got into pharmacy. He currently works in the community as an independent pharmacist.
I, believe it or not, lived down the corner from the pharmacy growing up and found it amazing what the pharmacists did. When the time came for me to pick a profession to go into, I chose pharmacy. I'm sure there's about 100 other reasons, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Our third pharmacist today is Dr. Mike Fisher. He obtained his degree from University of Pittsburgh and now currently serves his community's needs while working at Walgreens.
I, at the time, was just in a dead-end job and was in my early 30s, and originally out of high school thought about being a pharmacist and just never went that route, and thought, why am I in this job I don't like? I should just pick up where I wanted to be. And so I just went back, took the pre-rec courses, and applied to pharmacy school and got in.
Let's now listen to Tom Cuomo's career path.
I went to school up in New York. I was the beginning of the 5-year program in pharmacy. I'm not a doctorate of pharmacy. They were still giving out only bachelor's degrees at that point. Okay, but 5 years for a bachelor's degree. Okay, we're the beginning of what they call the 5-year program. I think I started in 1968, 1966. They ended it at 4 and said, no, you had to go to 5. Okay, so I got my 5-year degree, graduated Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy. In my day of going to school, we had to do internships while we were going to school. It didn't matter where you worked, whether it be retail, hospital, whatever it might. But that counted, again, to your state, it counted towards your requirement to take the state board. Once you graduated, in my years, the board was a 3-part board. The first part you took after school was just basic questions of pharmacy. Okay, it was a written test. After that test was done, you had to finish up your internship. It was a year, so you had 6 months while you were in school and 6 months after you graduated. Okay, I took my second part, which was a law test in December after I graduated, and then in January I had to take what we had to call, and it's still in some states, the wet board. I had to compound in order to get my license. I do 3 prescriptions, compound them, and they checked it, and with that, so I graduated in June. I didn't get my license until the following March. So that's the way. Obviously, we've progressed a whole lot by then, things like that. But we were at the beginning of those type of years where they changed it. I think that it's still the same thing. The education was very, very important. There's no doubt about it. I think over the years now, as you guys are going to school, you'll see different education classes than we have. But I still think it's important. I realize most of it's on computers now. You don't carry books like we did, but there's still some classics, and you know what a Remington is, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Pharmacy school back then was very different compared to now, mostly due to technology. Let's listen in on how pharmacy school was like for Dr. Drew Silverman and Tom Cuomo.
Well, the first thing is it was a 5-year BS. And the makeup was a lot different in that it was a majority male and a minority female. And so that's one of the things that we've seen a big shift over the last 30 years. And I think it's because women have realized that this is a great career to have a family with, because you can make good money even working part-time, right? And then you can be kind of like a stay-home parent. So I think that's what drove a lot of women into the profession. I also feel like, obviously, we had a library and we had books, and today you have the internet. So there's a huge difference in terms of the ability to gather information, right? So if I am reviewing an article and I want to find the articles that are cited so that I can review them too, I got to go back to the library, hope they have them. If they don't have them, I got to wait for them to come. Whereas today you can just go on the internet, find the article, pull it up, and boom, read it. So you guys are in a much more efficient time for learning, which should increase the capacity to learn, because you don't have to wait for things, and even things like a presentation, like we had PowerPoint, or not PowerPoint, we had slides. So you had to make your slides, you had to send them and get them developed, and then wait for them to come back to you, and that could take a week, 2 weeks. Today you can build your whole presentation in an hour. You might have to tweak it, but you can build it in an hour. And I can remember my first presentation as a PharmD student was on an overhead projector. I don't even know if you guys know anywhere what overhead projectors are. I know some teachers use them because now even the overhead projectors are cool and that they can interface with other things and project things on the screen. But so the technology is way better today. And even if you're on rounds, right, or you're in a hospital or in a retail pharmacy, you have the ability to look up information like that. Whereas our information was in a book that was probably already outdated the day it came out. They usually rewrite them every 2 to 4 years. So if you have a 3-year-old book that's due to come out with a new version in a year, it's way outdated already. So those are definitely some differences. The teaching styles have changed a little bit more too. I think today it's more interactive and it's more case-based as opposed to just throwing information and having you regurgitate it. And I think that's better because in my experience throughout the years, and in Pittsburgh I was an assistant professor for 6 years. Here I've been a clinical or adjunct professor with UF, University of South Florida, LECOM, NOVA, FAMU. People are a little bit better prepared to think on their feet than they were back then. Although I still think that the profession has a long way to go to really get that. And I think one of the reasons is that the class size has probably gotten bigger instead of smaller. So you may have 120 in your class, and when somebody's trying to teach you in that environment, they don't think interactive learning works. When you get tested, you can't grade 120 essays. So it's all multiple choice. So when I was a teacher at the University of Pittsburgh in the early 90s, I only had a class of 16 PharmD students. And so I could give them problem-based exams, and I could teach them how to think better. But definitely the case-based and interactive learning that we have today, I think, does help with critical thinking.
Okay, when I went to pharmacy school, the first 2 years were what they call pre-pharmacy. We took a lot of the classes that, like English, for lack of a better word, math, for lack of a better word. We did take some pharmacy classes like organic chemistry, not organic medicinals, organic chemistry. So the first 2 years of your pharmacy career, you get to make some decisions. Wow, this is a little bit tough, maybe I won't proceed. Once you did that, then your last 3 years, what we call the professional years. That's when we got the organic medicinals, the pharmacology, the pharmacognosy, those type of classes, and that's how you finished up here. That's what pharmacy school for us. Again, we did not have computers. We had a lot more labs. We had to actually mix and compound and things like that. So that's what pharmacy school was for us. But again, it was a 5-year program, and like I said, it was fully blown. But again, the first 2 years were like, we called it pre-pharmacy, things like that.
Dr. Silverman now shares with us some issues that faced pharmacy at the beginning of his career.
I would have to say the first pertinent issue in the beginning of my career was clinical pharmacy was in its infancy. And so getting us to the point where different professions respected us as pharmacists. So when I worked in retail, there was also the issue of the chain versus the independent. right? And it was a very competitive area there. Now it's almost impossible to find an independent pharmacist because they can't compete financially with the chains. And this is a problem with insurance companies and a problem with the chains. The chains really don't provide clinical pharmacy, even though you may see that on television. The independents did, but the independents got priced out on two fronts. One, chains buying groups got better discounts than independents who built buying groups. They still couldn't get the same discounts from the industry that the chains got. Secondly, insurance companies, because they thought they were saving money because the chains were costing less for the prescriptions, started to phase out independents as not covered, right? So you had to go to a chain. That was the approved pharmacist. So I've seen that develop over these 35 years. And the one thing I can tell you is that having been in the ambulatory environment where I have my own clinic, haven't been in retail, and haven't been in hospital and seen all aspects, the insurance companies don't understand the value of a pharmacist evaluating a patient. And this is the example I teach my students. This is the example I go to insurance companies when I'm trying to get them to pay for our services. You can save $2 on every drug the patient's on every month by going to the chain. And if they're on 6 meds, you're saving $12 a month, right? If I can get them off one of those meds that costs $120 a month and reduces the risk for side effects, I'm saving you a lot more money than $12 a month. And that's what I can do for you as an independent, where I actually spend time working with patients and understanding why they're on medications, whether they're being put on medication to counteract the side effect of another medication, in which case I might be able to get them off 2 medications, right? And that's what I do in my clinic. I frequently will stop medications. Just the cost alone is an issue, but also reducing the side effect risks and having a patient be admitted for something where they didn't even need to be on medication in the first place.
Typical days in pharmacy differ from location to location. Not all pharmacists in community do the same stuff. Tom Cuomo and Mike Fisher demonstrate this by explaining their roles.
When I worked on community pharmacy, the typical was taking prescriptions in from the patient, getting as much information as possible. In some cases, you weren't talking to the patient. You got to remember, back when I first got out of school, information, I'll call it the privacy, was so outrageous. There was nothing on the prescription other than the name of the drug, and you didn't challenge a doctor. Okay, there were times when you looked at the prescription, it didn't make sense. What are we doing here? It's not like we get more information now, where they tell us maybe what it is, so on and so forth. Controlled substances were totally different. I mean, there was no, other than internally, you didn't do anything. I mean, other than you knew somebody was coming in every day for the medication. There was nothing on computers, so everything had to be done manually. Okay, you also had to take care of your patients. You got to remember, we didn't have charge cards, or maybe 1/3 of the patients had charge cards. A lot of cash went through, things like that. So, and I would say at that point in my career, in the beginning, in like the 70s, community pharmacy as independence was probably more prevalent than the chains. Okay, little things like that. It was more so you and I graduated, we probably looked at opening up our own store. That was the key. Yes, there were a few other things you could do in your pharmacy. You carried medical supplies. My pharmacy, I carried ostomy supplies, things like that. So there were opportunities. And back then, maybe 20% had insurance. So insurance wasn't a problem. It was a cash business. You did a very fair job with it, and that was it. The patients came to you because you delivered. Maybe you charged for them until they got their paychecks. There was more patient-pharmacist interaction.
A lot of staring at a terminal and verifying, but if you can get out from under that and actually interact with people and answer questions, I really like that part of it. There's a lot of phone calls back and forth and faxing and clarifying, but there's a lot of talking to people and getting to know people. That part's really interesting. But there's a lot of mundane day-to-day stuff, but if you can sort of get beyond that and find your way to the interesting parts, you'll have a pretty good time.
Interprofessionalism is key to success in this profession. Pharmacists must work closely with other healthcare professionals to increase patient outcomes. Dr. Silverman explains this very well.
I think the opportunities are there But what I think is really important, and this is my advice to every pharmacist, they're not going to fall in your lap. You have to make them happen. When you're working with a group of other healthcare professionals, you've got to earn trust, right? So, you pick your battles. I am not going to have an argument over changing Pepcid from IV to PO. I'm going to mention it. If they don't want to do it, okay, fine, right? But if they want to put a drug on a patient that is dangerous, or they want to dose it where it's dangerous, we're going to have a big discussion about that. And I'm not always going to win, but I'm going to leave them with, well, if we're going to do this, this is what we have to watch for, right? So that's one thing. And then the other is, it's okay to make a recommendation and then leave it and then let them mull over it, and then a couple days later come back and make the same recommendation. And if they don't give you credit for it, that's okay. It's what's best for the patient. But one of the things that will happen is, even if they don't give you credit for it at that time, over time, now they will respect what you say and are more likely to listen to it right away.
Pharmacy as a profession still has many hurdles to jump. Dr. Silverman fills us in on what they are and what we can do.
So the profession is facing a challenge in that I personally think we have too many schools for the jobs that we have out there. And I think that as retail becomes more automated and boards of pharmacy start to allow that to be the thing that can be done, there won't be need for less pharmacists. And you may see things like, now we only need one pharmacist for every 6 or 8 technicians instead of every 2 to 4, depending on what state you're in, right? So guess what? The chains love that, because technician salaries are a lot cheaper than pharmacist salaries. Hospital pharmacy, same thing. You know, we have a big machine, we're getting a robot, and with barcoding, you start to question, what is the role of the pharmacist? So the biggest challenge that our profession faces is the same challenge it's always faced, but it's more important now than ever. We have to be clinical, because that's something you can't teach a machine to do. You can't teach machines to think. We have to be able to show, as a profession, we can think to the point where we save money. Unfortunately, you have to say that first, because insurance companies, payers, right, are going to look at that as the primary reason, because we are an expensive salary. We're not as expensive as physicians, but we're as expensive, if not more expensive, than nurse practitioners and PAs. So they look at that. A hospital looks at, I can get 4 nurses for every pharmacist I hire. I think nurses are more important. They're at the bedside. They're saving lives every day, because they don't understand what we do. So as a profession, we need to show the rest of the healthcare community globally, not just in pockets, what we've been trained to do and what we can do. And we need to document the value in lives saved, in admissions prevented, in decreased costs, right? And we haven't done that. We talk about it. We've been talking about it since I've been a pharmacist, and we're not there. There are pieces of literature out there showing the value in pockets. It's got to be better than that. It's got to be global. Like, pharmacists should be doing this everywhere, not just pockets. And that's what's going to save the profession, and hopefully allow us to continue to produce PharmDs at the rate we are, that will have the opportunity to get good jobs, fulfilling jobs.